Hello and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori and this is Africa 54. Tonight, Egypt remains a powder keg. Dozens of people are dead and parts of Cairo resemble a war zone after security forces moved to clear two camps filled with supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi. Now, the dramatic dawn raids ignited violent clashes as police, backed by bulldozers and armored cars, fired on demonstrators. We have team coverage, beginning with VOA's Elizabeth Arrott in Cairo.
Egyptian security forces moved on Cairo's two main anti-government camps early Wednesday, making good on their threat to disperse the sit-ins they called a threat to national security. Clouds of smoke rose over the Rabaa al-Adawiya and Nahda camps, and gunfire rang out. Authorities say they used only tear gas against the protesters and offered safe exit to those who would leave peacefully. But the scenes of dead and wounded told a different story. Supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi say security was using live ammunition indiscriminately and snipers were shooting from rooftops into the crowd. Protesters who were forced out of the camps are now rallying in other parts of the capital, with clashes and gunfire in several districts. Efforts to find compromise in recent weeks had floundered, and now the deep political divisions between supporters of the military and those who backed the president it ousted July 3rd appear wider than ever. On Monday, a spokesman at the Rabaa camp said even if protest leaders called for calm, many demonstrators may be beyond control.
The people on the street now, we as a whole, as a collective, we decide what's going to happen, not the leadership, not anybody.
As the day progressed, violence spread throughout the country, with reports of confrontations between protesters and security, as well as attacks on police stations in various cities, including Alexandria and Suez. Elizabeth Arrott, VOA News, Cairo.
Well, joining me now live from Cairo is Elizabeth Arrott. How are you, Elizabeth?
Hi, Vincent.
Hi. Now, tell us first what you're seeing, what you've seen today, how the situation is in Cairo.
It's really quite bad. It started, obviously, as we noted earlier today, about 7 a.m. when the security forces went in on both of these camps. They cleared one of them by mid-morning, but the fighting had continued at the main sit-in at Rabaa al-Adawiya in eastern Cairo. There are widely differing accounts of how many casualties, but it's at least probably 100 that we're hearing from the security forces, from the officials, and several hundred by supporters of the ousted President Mohamed Morsi.
Now, it appears that the violence did not just center on the two camps, that it was spreading even into the outskirts of Cairo. Is that the situation?
Absolutely. It doesn't seem that there was much thought given to what the aftermath of this would be, because they did disperse all these people who now have no center of protest and have now gone across the town. We're seeing standoffs on bridges in various areas. They have set up various points around the city, and it's become quite a very fluid, very dangerous situation right now.
Earlier on, the Brotherhood officials had said that they were not forcing people to stay at the squares, that people are free to leave. Are there any who voluntarily left earlier?
There were reports that some people were leaving through these safe corridors that the government said that it set up, but many people stayed, and it happened very, very quickly. People were expecting a pre-dawn raid, as previous confrontations had been, and we're really kind of at 7 o'clock. They thought the danger had passed, and then we saw some footage of, it looked like very indiscriminate firing directly into the camps, and some of them did have children. I've seen many children at the camps in the past few weeks, and it is did not seem the best strategy.
Now, we've been concerned about you also, Elizabeth. We hear reports of journalists being detained. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, there were two very sad incidents today. A British cameraman and a woman from a Gulf news station were killed. We were much more fortunate. My cameraman and myself, Japhet Weeks, we were detained. He was beaten and kicked as we were forced out of a car. But we were near a police station. They detained us, and they did release us without charge. But it is very, very dangerous out there.
You've got to be careful. Now, the United States, Amnesty International, they've all condemned this situation, and particularly the state of emergency. What leverage does the U.S. have at this moment to reverse things in Egypt?
It's very hard to say. Certainly, they tried in the weeks leading up to this by sending envoys to try and find some kind of compromise or bridge between the two camps. That obviously did not work. Of course, the aid from the United States to Egypt goes mainly to the military. However, the military, and who is pretty much running the show right now, has just gotten a $12 billion infusion from Gulf states. So that $1 billion that it gets from the U.S. has a little bit less leverage than they previously had.
Mm-hmm. Now, a whole month of a state of emergency, what does this mean to the Egyptians?
Well, it's unfortunately very, very familiar to Egyptians. They had it for 30 years under Mubarak, the president who was ousted in 2011. And the state of emergency was a very big part of discontent against him. So to have this back, it means that all normal civil laws have been put to the side. Police can arrest and detain people for any amount of time they want. And on top of that, they have imposed a curfew. So movement is now going to be curtailed for a large part of the evening and overnight.
Now, we know that there are other parties in Egypt besides the Brotherhood. Are there any reactions from these other parties?
There has been, yes, definitely people who had been allied with the military government. Mohamed al-Baradei, who had been the deputy prime minister, he has resigned just about an hour ago in protest over the violence. So we are seeing a split between those who initially sort of broke with that had backed the military government and now are not.
Very quickly, from what you're hearing, what is the end game for the government here?
Very hard to tell. I mean, it's back to square one in terms of a heavy-handed state, the exact kind of state, as I mentioned, that the people of Egypt tried to overthrow in 2011.
From the demonstrators, are they saying they'll still come back, or you haven't heard anything from them?
Well, the demonstrators right now are just the pro-Morsi supporters are reeling from the attacks from today. They are moving out across the city. We're seeing fights breaking out in other cities, Alexandria, Suez, really across the country. So it's as far as an end game, it's hard to know, but certainly they have vowed further protests.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth, and take care. Elizabeth Arrott of the Voice of America reporting to us live from Cairo.